Welcome to Lightree Media. We've been doing a tour of Delta State and we started this journey in Asaba. Tourism is everything in Nigeria, and someone who has always been interested in tourism in Nigeria happened to come into Asaba, and I told myself I'm going to be the first to interview this world traveler. Incidentally, he was one Nigeria who won the then CNN International Award for his travel stories. His name, Pelu Awofeso. Glad to have you on our show. Quick takes with Ejiro Umukoro.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's good to be in Asaba.
You look fresh. Is Asaba treating you well?
It's the Asaba air.
It's Asaba air, right? We have a certain kind of air.
Exactly.
So welcome to our state.
Thank you. It's good to be back. I mean, this is my second time in Asaba.
Oh, you don't say?
I'd been here many years ago, maybe like more than a decade ago.
Oh, wow.
When I was doing a pan-Nigerian trip.
Right.
And I stopped over for like an overnight stay.
Oh, wow.
You know, I really couldn't stay so much. I couldn't spend so much time in the city, and I've always wanted to return. And now I have come back.
You are here.
I'm here.
2023.
And I plan to be here.
On the eve of election, as it were.
Exactly. I can see all the political signages all over the place.
Right.
But I'm not here for politics. I'm here for travel, for culture, for history.
Why is Asaba top on your list? I mean, because this is January, February, like the year just started, first quarter. Why?
Yeah. It's funny. You probably would not believe it. But I can tell you that from my previous studies of different states in Nigeria, Delta State has so many tourist attractions, so many impressive landmarks. And I keep wondering, why is Delta State not known for its tourist assets? Why is the state known for something else and not this tourism? The state is rich in every conceivable asset that any state will be happy to have and to sell. When
you talk about this, what just struck me was the fact that in the whole of Nigeria, Delta State is the one with the highest number of stadia, 8 stadia.
Oh my goodness.
No other state can boast of that number of sports facilities.
I did not even know about that. You know, but it's again, that's a selling point. Unfortunately, we have a population of football crazy people.
We're the number one, man.
Are so
in Africa.
Yes, who are so fixated on foreign leagues. Imagine if we had been able to build our local football league. Just imagine the sort of traffic we'll be getting in those stadia. Right. How many several thousands of people will be going to watch the matches every weekend.
Have you been to River Ethiopia?
Incidentally, that is one place that has always wanted me to come here. I haven't been. There's so much noise about it outside of here. People have come to River Ethiopia. I got to know about it about maybe 7 years ago. And I'm like, this is a very remarkable water body. I need to come and see it.
The story behind it is amazing.
Yeah, I know it's, I think the story is, it's remarkable. It's like, it originates from somewhere, it passes through somewhere, it ends somewhere. And I think the color is also a major characteristic of that river. I used to know quite a bit about here. Well, I won't say unfortunately. On this trip, I'm traveling blind.
You're traveling blind?
I'm traveling blind.
Have you been to the Landers Brothers, for example? Did you explore that?
Yes.
Oh, you did? Awesome. Tell us all your first impression of the Landers Brothers.
And I was blown away, really. You know, stepping into that, I would say, Anchorage premises, hallowed ground, I would say.
You call it hallowed?
It's hallowed ground. You get into that space and you will know that something historical happened here.
What were the pointers for you?
You see, the only thing I couldn't ascertain was whether the Anchorage was the actual one that the Lander brothers traveled with. Or, I mean, you know, they had...
You saw the symbol of the anchor.
Yeah, you see the anchor, a normal anchor that comes, that every, water vessel will use.
Is the original one.
That you'll anchor yourself with, and then you disembark and do whatever you want to do on the land and then get back. So I'm just not sure.
It is the exact one.
If it is, and it's quite remarkable. The Lander brothers traveled in the 1830s. If that is still the thing from the 1830s, then is the reason Delta State is selling itself short.
I quite agree.
It's quite painful, but it's a good thing that the state has actually realized what it has, and they are now giving that place a facelift. So I can see that there is a construction going on in that place to make it a little bit more befitting of the historical relevance of that site. Because, like I said, you walk in, you are first drawn to the anchorage, maybe like up like 10 feet high, maybe 10 to 20 feet. There's a pedestal, and then there's the anchorage. And then you are struck by the presence of that inanimate thing that was the only thing perhaps left from this incident involving the Landa brothers. You know, they were traveling, they were trying to navigate the river Niger, river Benue, and just to find, okay, where is it starting from, where is it headed? And they were caught by the locals back in the 1830s. And unfortunately, Richard was shot in the leg and he sustained an injury. Luckily for him, he didn't die. They were able to put him on a vessel and they took him to Fernando Po, where he got some healing, but unfortunately later died. The major incident around that expedition happened right where we have the
Landa Brothers Anchorage, yeah.
Yeah, so that is significant.
For those who don't know where the Landa Brothers Anchorage is, let me quickly give you a sense of it. If you've ever come to Asaba and you get to Summit, get to Interbao, then you come navigate your way on the one singular road that makes Asaba, the NMBC road. When you get as far as the Regina Mundi Secondary School, the school itself, just opposite it, that is actually where you have the Landa Brothers. There is a tired road. I call it tired road, but it's actually tarred road that you navigate through. And when you get there, I had the first experience of being there. And one thing that struck me was the fact that I felt it was dead. Like, I did not know with the history that goes with the Landa Brothers Anchorage as a museum of sorts, because you also have a cemetery in that place.
I was going to come to the cemetery, yes.
Right. It didn't strike me as this is somewhere I want to come to. It didn't look like people even navigate to pass through there, like a sight attraction that a tourist will say, this is a go-to place.
That should be one of the top places of interest for Delta State.
You saw the river.
Yes.
And then the dredging that was happening in the river. The breeze.
The river, the site around it reminds me of the confluence town, Lokoja.
Exactly.
If you've been to Lokoja, if you've been by
that bridge.
Not even the bridge.
For those who don't know Lokoja.
Okay, so Lokoja, you know, it's called the confluence town because that is where the river Niger and the river Benue meet.
Yes.
You need to come down from the highway, from the road, straight down to the shore area.
Yes.
And then you take a boat on the water. You can actually have a boat ride.
Absolutely.
And then a boat ride, about a 10-minute boat ride will take you to the small island where the river bifurcates. River Niger goes this way.
Striking.
River Benue goes this way. The beautiful thing is, on that island, it's a bird watching area. You will see birds all over the place. And then from there, you can see the hotels, you can see the beauty of two rivers flowing just in front of you and behind you. That is the scenery that you find by the anchorage in Asaba.
And yet it's not tapped into.
It is not. Of course, I think they are starting to now want to tap into it. We talked about the cemetery. You see, there's a lot of history in Nigeria. Colonial history, pre-colonial history, post-colonial. You know, so when you get into the anchorage, you see this cemetery on the side. It has maybe about 50, you know, gravestones or tombstones. Some of them, of course, derelict. Some still in good shape. But the fascinating thing for me is that I've been doing a lot of historical work on the colonial era of Nigeria. And I know because the British came here in their hundreds and thousands. Initially, they were dying off because of the malaria. Later on, they were able to produce the medicine that ensured that they didn't die in large numbers anymore. So the moment they had that curation, treatment for malaria, they felt, yes, we can now come here and we know that we won't need to die. But even at that, many people still, their system could not take the weather, the mosquito bite, and they still died. Now, so at the cemetery, you will find the graves of captains of ships. You will find the graves of missionaries. You'll find the graves of British nobility, people who were very important people in their country, but who came to the shores of what is today's Nigeria, who came to areas like Asaba, you know, to Calabar, to Bonny Island, all of those coastal areas, but we are focusing on Delta State now, which is Asaba. So they were all part of a massive wave of British colonial people who came for business, for religion, Christianity. They brought Christianity to the south.
They did.
They came to trade first in human beings, which was the reason for the slave trade. And then when the slave trade was abolished, they now moved into oil palm. They began to trade in oil palm. And later on, they began to trade in other things. So people came here to do all sorts of things. That history is what is recorded, not by humans. It is recorded by a force of nature because they died out of natural causes. Some of them drowned in the water. They were pulled out. They couldn't be taken back to the UK. They were buried by the waterside. So it's a place of memory. It's a place where you go and you feel some sort of mellowness in your spirit.
Yeah, I was mellow the first time I got there. Something swallowed my spirit, and it's like something also died at the same time. And I felt that if people come here, that is the Landa Brothers Anchorage at close to the Obogonogo Popular Market, they would leave feeling more solemn
Yes.
and surreal than
Yes.
they came in.
And I hope that when the facility is completed,
Yes.
noise by way of music and drinking will be discouraged. That is not a place you go to be happy. It's a place you go to reflect.
Right.
It's a place you go to sit down. Good enough, it's surrounded by trees. There's some sort of nature cover around that area. It's a place you go to just basically reflect. It's not a place to go for noise making. It's not a place to go to have fun. It's a place you just go to
kind of have some commune of some sort.
To commune, to have a conversation with the invincible Almighty.
Right.
With the scene, the scenery, the scenic beauty right in front of you.
And the history of
and the history that backs it all up. That is what that place should be like. It should be a pilgrimage. It should be a pilgrimage spot.
It ought to be. I don't know why, but I mean, people pay so much to go to the pilgrimage in Israel. Exactly. I don't see why the pilgrimage should be here.
A pilgrimage spot does not have to be faith-based.
No, it doesn't have to be.
Places like that, the Anchorage, the Landa Brothers Anchorage, is a perfect candidate for a pilgrimage location.
Something like a UNESCO recognition spot eventually, if they do it right.
Exactly.
Now, let's go quickly into how many states in Nigeria have you traveled to in this your line of discovering and supporting, promoting all things Nigerian tourism?
It hasn't changed in a long time. It's been 32 states.
32 out of 36.
Out of 36. And I thought that by now I will have actually covered the other 4.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I still have been traveling to many of those states multiple times.
Right.
I still haven't been able to go to Ebonyi, for example. And I really hope that I can go to Ebonyi this year.
Okay.
Because that will now mean that Ebonyi is the only state in the southeast that I have not covered.
Okay.
So once I land in Ebonyi, I'm going to make a lot of noise.
Ooh.
And a lot of noise and around it. Because I'll say, you know what? My final state in the southeast, I have now seen it, Ebonyi. And I actually look forward to taking a tour around Ebonyi because I hear that, well, the government has done so much to transform the city.
Okay, until you get there, let's not say nothing.
Exactly. So I'll get there and I look forward to what I want to see.
So if you give in the ratings of states you've been to, first impressions, like when you enter a city, you see its people, the ambience, the structure, the architecture, the people, the environment. Which one of the states in Nigeria would you say hit you like this is something here? I am giving a guess that it may not be more than 1 or 2 or 3, if at all. Which state in Nigeria will do that to you?
You know, I'm taking my time to respond because I think there have been 1 or 2 states like that. Number 1 will have to be Jos.
Why Jos?
Jos is a beauty Nigerians don't even understand exists.
I know, right?
Oh my goodness! Have you
been to Jos?
You've been to. Oh, so
I know what you're talking about.
The moment you drive into the Jos, the plateau, well, let's just say the area around Jos, the capital of Plateau State, you will immediately sense that you've changed location.
There's no doubt
because you're going to come in from the Kaduna State area. The moment you drive into what is called forest, you begin to see a change in the weather, and then you go from being in a warm weather area to being in something like temperate weather situation, and you begin to feel it as you're breathing. And you know, wow, I'm in a new space. And then the 45-50 minute drive into the state capital, you're seeing rocks on the left side and the right side of the road, and you are seeing
the landscape, the topography.
The landscape is the magic about Jos, and I really was hoping that Nigeria will have seen the beauty of that space and turn it into one of Nigeria's holiday capitals.
It did was that way before.
before the unfortunate violence and clashes.
And I think the media didn't help in the way it told the narratives of that place, because why bad news sells, I think the media could have also known how to manage the storytelling
True.
of that. Because if something is happening in just one area, you don't just give it the big name of a place and give it a blanket
That is
name.
a mistake.
And I think
I agree with you.
the media should
Because
stop that.
again, I lived in Jos for 3 years. So I know about Jos, I know about Plateau. My very first guidebook
Yes.
for tourists was on Jos and environs. So I know this place like the back of my hand.
Talking about your first tourism story, which award was it with the CNN award for travel did you get?
Okay, so
what story was that?
So there were 2 stories that won me the award for so it's called the CNN Multi-Choice African Journalism Awards.
Correct.
And I won in the tourism category.
Right.
So 2 stories earned me that honor. One on Calabar. Of course, we know Calabar as maybe like the centerpiece of Nigerian tourism. It has really been able to build itself as, it has had that reputation as a tourist city or tourism city. So I wrote a piece on that place, on my experience of taking a tour around. And then I also wrote a story about the coal mining in Enugu.
Oh,
you know, so
that's like a forgotten history, you know.
So this is basically a forgotten history, and this was a part of our evolution. You know, I said the British came for business, for the brought religion. Part of the things many of them were coming to do was to work in the tin mines, to oversee the the coal mine.
The coal mine.
There was tin mining in Jos.
Jos, correct.
They oversaw that too.
Yes.
There was coal mining going on in Enugu State. They oversaw that too. And so I was taking my trip around, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is, when you mentioned Enugu, you mentioned coal. So I did a story around my trip around that area, and then I sent it in. And then the panel felt like these 2 stories were beautifully written. They took us to those locations that this man is talking about. And to have won that award for a country that is not so widely celebrated as a tourism destination made all the difference for me. And I felt like with that kind of award, I got the push that I needed to carry on doing what I needed to do for Nigerian tourism. I have not stopped, and I've not looked back ever since.
You haven't at all?
I haven't, and I don't think I'm ever going to do that. This is a calling that I've taken upon myself.
Right. I like what you just said about the calling and your consistency in pursuing the calling. In your experience, how do you think Nigerians relate to tourism in Nigeria in terms of its value and as the go-to place instead of anywhere else in Africa, and in particular Europe and America, which has been the bane of our own travel trips?
For a long time, Nigerians were not interested in anything Nigerian in terms of travel, leisure, recreation, holiday making, and all of that. But in the past 5 years, thanks to the pandemic, we're beginning to see people look within at the opportunities within. Again, you can also see that there's a lot of inflation. The naira is losing its value seriously against the dollar. So many people who could easily afford to travel abroad are not able to do so in the same numbers of the past. So we are seeing people looking around the country.
So it took the valuing of the naira for us to appreciate our own tourism potential.
Something like that. And it takes something to make something happen. So it has taken a combination of forces to make Nigerians see that, okay, there's actually so much beauty, so many interesting things in our own backyard that we need to focus on. And this change is also being driven by the younger generation of Nigerians who have the smartphone, who have data, who are up and running, who are energetic.
Right.
They can't be held in one spot. So they are going out discovering new places and using the power of their smartphone and the power of social media to spread the word. And when people see what they are sharing, they are also interested. So we have a growing wave of Nigerian travelers traveling within Nigeria. And they are taking that passion also outside of Nigeria and exploring West Africa. That is a beautiful thing to happen in this generation. And I think it can only get better.
That's a powerful story right there.
Yeah, it's already happening.
Then when you now compare the role of travel organization, travel bodies, monitoring bodies and things like that, do you think they're working enough in harmony? Or do you think they are so divided in the multiplicity of the various tourism organizations that seem to be, popping here and there? How do you see that?
I don't think the bodies are really doing much. I've been in the industry for quite a while. I know there are specific associations, groups, collectives, which are supposed to drive the promotion of domestic tourism. there really isn't so much going on in that space. So what you see, what I made reference to earlier about an increasing awareness of our tourism assets is basically happening organically. It's not being driven or spearheaded by any industry-based association. It is just individuals waking up to realize that there's so much around us. Why are we just slacking? Why are we dulling? So they are taking the bull by the horn and going after their interests, and they are not letting anybody tell them you can't do it. You know, they're just getting up and going. I'm impressed myself. They are doing what I did 20 years ago.
That's a long journey.
Yes, when I was traveling, there were no smartphones, there was no social media. You couldn't just create content and throw it out there in a blink of an eye.
But you transcribed them into books, as it were, your stories. You
Yes,
put
so
them
I was
into
always
books.
traveling with a notebook and a pen.
Yes.
And initially, I was traveling with a camera with a film.
Right.
And then we graduated from using cameras and film to being able to take digital cameras around, you know, point and shoot, small digital cameras. They are nothing compared to what is available now. So I was always doing all the hard work of that. And then my interviews were always being done with a midget. You know, some interviews I wouldn't have the time to record them. I'll just quickly scribble them in longhand in my notebook, knowing that when I get back to my base, I will look at them and I can create my stories around them.
How many books have you put together in your travel history so far?
5 books so far.
5 books. Can we have the names?
So, like I said, the very first one was a guidebook to Jos, which I titled A Place Called Peace.
That's a good title.
Yes, that's what Jos represents to me, regardless of whatever must have happened in the recent years. It remains a very peaceful community with very peace-loving, peaceful people. Plateau State people are some of the most charming Nigerians you will ever meet.
I agree.
And then after that, I followed up with a complete collection of all the festivals that I've covered.
Right.
And the second book is titled Nigerian Festivals,
okay,
the famous and not so famous. And then afterwards, I did a pan-Nigerian trip in 2009/2010.
Mm-hmm.
And the stories that I wrote from that trip, it lasted about 9 to 10 months. The stories I wrote from that adventure, the 2 that I mentioned earlier, were the ones I submitted for the awards. So that journey itself, I spent my money on it, and the award was my own reward for committing my own resources, putting my mouth where my money was. And then I collected it into what I titled Tour of Duty, Journeys Around Nigeria and Sketches of Everyday Life. Some years later, I followed up with a book solely focused on the Ejiro Festival of Lagos, which I titled White Lagos. You know, it's the most authoritative book you'll find on the Ejiro culture of Lagos. And then my most recent book, published in October 2022, is titled 9 Degrees North, Journeys Backpacking Stories Across Nigeria. So from the title, you probably will be able to guess it is me celebrating the northern part of the country that we don't seem to associate anything with other than Boko Haram, kidnapping, banditry. It's unfortunate
It's not true. That's not a full
that we have a
representation.
one-sided story of
Yeah.
northern Nigeria. I have traveled extensively in northern Nigeria. I know there's more to that part of the country than just all
And
those
so
things.
have I.
You
I
know,
think the only part of Nigeria I've not traveled to, I've not been to Kano, I've not been to, what do you call this place, Nasarawa? No, I think I've been to Nasarawa. I've not been to Niger. I've not
Niger.
been Niger, rather. I keep calling it Niger. Niger, sorry.
Okay.
I've not been to Niger, and I've not been to these other states. I think that's the only 3 states in the north I've not been to.
Okay, there's Katsina, there's
yeah, I've been to Katsina.
Gombe.
I've been to Gombe. I've gone to.
You're also widely traveled yourself, so yeah.
So,
just that you don't write travel stories.
I don't like travel stories. I like to document stories the other way around.
The other way around.
And
Okay.
short videos.
I'm a travel writer.
You are the expertise.
And that is all I do.
You got the expertise in that aspect.
You know, so yeah, so that's been, so those are the books that I've written, and of course I've written hundreds and hundreds of articles.
Yes.
Published locally and outside.
So now that you're about to leave Asaba, because I think your journey has finally come to its tapering end.
Yeah.
What was the last impression you got? And what is the impression or message you would tell to somebody who have never been to Asaba before, to say, look, this is a place, these are my impressions, and
yeah, so again, my belief in in the fact that Delta State has a lot to offer the traveling community still stands.
Okay.
Even though I've not been able to explore everywhere that I had in mind to explore, I've still been able to see a couple of, attractions that make me still want to come back.
Oh, really? So there's a second coming.
There will be a second coming, a third coming, a fourth coming.
Okay.
For as long as I can make the time.
Okay.
And because there are so many things, there are so many places that I need to still travel to.
Okay.
So I will always be back here, and I will encourage people to come to Asaba, to go to Warri, to go to. Well, I know Warri and Asaba are the two main.
Sapele used to be like the go-to place. It was industrialized city back then of Nigeria, where you had the timber. Yes.
And now it's just like a place you pass. Because we passed by Sapele on our way here. And so there's a lot to discover in Delta State.
I know, right?
There's a lot to discover in Nigeria as a country.
Absolutely.
And I will encourage our people to be bold, to not be scared by what the news headlines are saying, and to just get up and go and explore their own country and learn more about the country. Because for me, I see travel as a way to learn.
It is an education.
The knowledge that I've acquired from traveling around Nigeria is incomparable to anything I could have read in the books. It's just amazing the sort of things that I've acquired as a Nigerian traveling in Nigeria. So I recommend the same for fellow Nigerians, young, middle-aged, or old.
That sounds like the president of Nigeria saying, fellow Nigerians, please come to Delta State, visit the capital city, Asaba, go to Warri, explore Sapele. Egypt River is one of the places you must have a go-to as your tourism, one spot you got to experience. I've been there. I know what it feels like. It's excellent. So, Pelu Awofeso, thank you for joining us here on Quick Takes with Ejiro Umukoro.
Thank you for close marking me to do this interview. I enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing how the world will receive this conversation. And I hope it inspires people to want to take a journey around the country.
Come to my city. Asaba is my city. I love my city. I keep promoting it because I believe in its tourism potential. I feel it's underspoken, under-celebrated, under-visited, and under-tapped revenue opportunity for a state that is an oil and gas rich state that has no reason to be waiting for the federal to send them revenue every month. I'm Ejiro Umukoro, and this has been Quick Takes. More stories and more ideas we'll be bringing to you from time to time. Have a great day.